Hey everyone, welcome to a special session or Dev Radio where we are looking at the Blazor GraphQL toolkit and get a really hands-on not only with how to use the toolkit, but how to dig in and customize certain parts of the toolkit. Samir, Matt, welcome back. Samir, you showed us some incredible things with getting started with the toolkit and customizing UI, but now I want some more meat. I want to learn how to customize the API so I can actually say this is deployable and this is mission ready from day one. So Samir, I know you're more than excited to talk to us about customizing that GraphQL API. And I know many people in our audience that GraphQL may be new to them. So hopefully, we can see a lot of really cool technical stuff that we can add to our repertoire after this session.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back, and let's talk GraphQL. But if I just tell you what GraphQL is, you're kind of going to get bored and you're not going to be interested. So let's actually show you. So here's the solution that we pulled down. And again, we did minimal configuration to get this up and running. There's this GraphQL project that we haven't really dived into. So the GraphQL project that we use in the starter kit uses the Hot Chocolate library. So it's an open source library for doing GraphQL on .NET. Let's walk through what that looks like. It also comes with an IDE. So I'm going to hit F5 to get it up and running. The IDE that GraphQL comes with is by far the most powerful part of GraphQL. So whether you're doing GraphQL with Apollo on Node backends or Hot Chocolate on a C# based backend, the IDE is going to be your best friend. And both you as a developer of a front end or as a developer of an API are going to absolutely fall in love with this thing. It's going to change how you do dev. When I've used this in projects, it has completely changed everything for me. And all kinds of modern front ends use it. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Airbnb, any of these big mega sites use GraphQL. And I think what I'm going to show you today is that even if you're developing a site that is just for 1 or 2 users or just for internal use, using GraphQL from the start is going to make a huge difference.
All right.
Okay, so we have a secure API. So when I'm in the IDE, which is called Banana Cake Pop, I'm not going to actually be able to do much until I go and grab a token so I have access to it. So what we've included in the front end, let's go back over to the front end, is when I click on Fetch Data from GraphQL, it's going to single sign me in. It's going to automatically fetch a token, and it's going to make it really easy for me to go and copy. So we had this big clumsy access token, and I know it looked really weird. And like, why do you guys have that? And the idea is that this way, when you're getting started with the backend development piece, you'll be in a much better shape. So let's copy that.
So let's see. Do you copy the entire token, or do you have to copy a portion? I'm not familiar with the token format.
Oh, you actually do have to copy the entire token. Thanks for pointing out that I didn't grab all of it. That would have been quite a miss.
No worries. I've done it enough times.
Okay, so let's go back over to our other window where Banana Cake Pop is running. Here we are. And I was doing some dev earlier, so I've got some untitled windows here. Let's go ahead and close them. And we'll show you what your experience is going to be like the first time that you launch this. Banana Cake Pop is all run client side. So this is an app that is just run client side. We'll close all these. Oh my goodness, I've got so many of these windows open. But like I said, once you hit the ability to do this kind of stuff, you're going to absolutely love it.
Okay.
So we got to pass our token in to get our basic information. And the way you're going to do that in Banana Cake Pop is you're going to click on these, the little hamburger button up here. We're going to get this window to pop up, which is our HTTP header section. And now here's the really cool thing for Visual Studio developers. We've got a lot of IntelliSense built right into this IDE. I'm going to hit Control Shift, and it's going to give me, here are all the options. the option we want, and this is in the documentation, is authorization. You can see it added that, put the quotes in for me too. And unfortunately, the one thing we do have to do here is we have to type in bearer.
And that's not a Microsoft specific thing. This is a bearer token. It's a pretty standard pattern. So yeah, anytime you use a bearer token, you have to identify it as a bearer token. Just like there's other types of tokens you have to identify if you're using them.
Exactly.
World auth.
And look at this. So I just did Control V, and just like in Visual Studio, I've got the squiggly, well, what is a red line, but in my dark shifted world is a blue line saying, hey, wait, this is an unexpected end of string. And of course, what's actually happened is I've just got a
Extra space.
backspace. Yep. And now.
Well, the squigglies are universal. Everybody knows squigglies are bad.
Yeah,
Despite
exactly.
the color. They're just bad.
So what you're going to be able to do now is you're going to click on this button, which is going to refresh the schema of our backend. And we're going to do that. All right. And now over here on the left, I know this has been here the whole time, but it has now been refreshed. And I've got these cool things here that give me two different queries, welcome and questionnaire. In the case of our medical app, these are going to be really important. So let's talk about what it is. So just like in SQL, queries are things that you can use to fetch data.
Okay.
And we're going to start doing things that are going to look familiar to anyone who's developed a front-end app. So let's go ahead and call that welcome query. And by the way, look at how nice this is, Sydney. It's telling me that this is going to return a string. And incidentally, yeah, so exactly.
Query welcome path and return values is string. So for GraphQL, this reminds me of SOAP, where you have an endpoint and you send a post where you tell it what commands you want to run on the back end, giving you the flexibility to change things without having a version or create really complex URIs. Maybe I'm saying something bad by saying it reminds me of SOAP, but I did like that about SOAP.
It has a lot of those features, but I think what I'm going to show you is immediately when you said SOAP, one of the things I'm thinking about is as a front-end developer, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to tell it like, what are all the things that I'm expecting to get?
Oh yeah.
On a format like you don't do any of that here.
Def by XML.
Exactly. So GraphQL is it is entirely JSON based, which is very nice for our front-end apps. But here we go. Let's start typing in. So again, I'm down here. You can see I've got line 1, and I'm going to do control space because sorry, I was on line 1. I guess I'm not anymore. Am I somewhere else?
Oh, it looks like you're on line 1.
That's really odd. All right, we'll open up a new tab and see what's happening. Okay. All right, so I'm going to hit control space. Oh my goodness. All right. Let's open up yet another one and let's just start typing. I'm not sure why I'm not able
to refresh the backend or refresh the browser. I'd copied authorization JSON though first, just because that would be a pain to find again. So on your first Untitled 1 tab, I would copy that HTTP header. Where did it go? There we go. Yeah, I'd copy that just because don't want to type that out again.
That is absolutely the case. Okay, let's go and copy it. And also, you know what we should do? We should make sure we're actually still running. In the amount of time that we've been talking, you might have quit debug. No. Okay, so we are still running. And let's go and hide that and see why we can't type here. Wow. It's because we were stuck in the schema window. We were exploring the schema. Sorry about that. So let's get back to where we were. So let's use IntelliSense, and we'll do control space,
Oh
and I'm
wow.
giving my options here. Right. So I've got a lot of stuff. I've got query. I've got mutate. We haven't talked about any of those. Let's shy away from mutate. It sounds kind of scary at the moment. We'll go to query.
Okay.
So again, I'm going to do control space. It's going to tell me here are all the queries that I have available. We see questionnaires and we see welcome. Let's run welcome. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and hit this run button here.
Oh, so we were trying to type in a response window. I got it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think I've done that in Postman before.
So I'm getting this cool output here, and I want you to notice something because this is where GraphQL starts to get very interesting. So I've got a very structured pattern with graph. I always get this data : the name of the query and congrats. But let's say I don't want the output. My front end doesn't want the output to be welcome. I'm changing the front end, and I want it to say hi instead as the output. So if this was our traditional web app, what I have to do as a front end team is go and talk to my back end peers and say, yeah, I know. And it gets even worse, Sydney, because all I'm doing is saying, I just want you to change what that data element is. And they'd say, like, do you really want to do that or not?
I'm going to hide the names to protect the innocent, but I worked on a healthcare application for multiple years on a team of more than 100 developers. And I think it's 20, 30 of us were consultants. And so we had contracts between the teams, like literally written contracts on what our APIs would be. So if you broke the contract, you broke at least 5 other teams, and maybe we're down for a month or two. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Completely understand how scary that can be.
It is the absolute real world of API and front end development.
Yeah.
But in GraphQL, it's super easy. So let's alias this to hi, and we'll just do hi : and now when I run play, it's coming back as hi. So,
wow, we alias it just like a SQL query.
Exactly. The back-end team didn't have to make a change. The front-end team only has changed the contents of this query. And it gets really even more interesting because all I'm doing, if I was to pop open the network trace, I'd see that I'm just sending a post to my localhost URL with this in the body. And that's it. And so here's where things start to get very interesting. In your traditional web app, if I wanted a new query, what I'd have to go and tell the backend team to do is, hey, I want a new query. They're going to have to create a new REST endpoint for me.
Yes.
And so that's going to be a new context route that they have to add. So that means they have to go through the process maybe of getting it secured, maybe of getting security exceptions, letting people know it's out there, monitoring it. All kinds of stuff's going to have to happen. And then in my front end app, I'm going to have to go and address it and make sure I spell it right, all kinds of stuff with GraphQL. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Danny.
I was going to say, I'll take it even further. If you've done any type of REST API development, Git without anything else typically means return all. And then Git with some identifier means return one. So if you want to Git with a query, you have to define your own standard because that's not technically the RESTful standard. You have to come up with your own query parameters. And then on the backend dev team, you have to test all the possible permutations of parameters. And you have to make sure that your query version of Git doesn't cause regression issues on your Git all. So having a query system like GraphQL, that solves so many problems.
Exactly. And it makes it so that as a front-end developer or as a back-end developer, I can have meaningful conversations with my peer. I don't have to have kind of combative positions of, hey, why do you want that? Because it's going to be a lot of work for me. But all your requests will go through this one endpoint for your entire app. And I can already hear some developers who are used to REST saying, well, wait a second, this is going to create a problem. So here's a typical problem that we have in REST. With a browser, you only get 4 connections to a backend at a time, typically. So if you want to do something like, let's say you want to fetch this welcome message 4 times, that's going to be 4 connections. Let's say you want to fetch it a 5th time, all in one call. Then you've got a problem because now you're going to have to wait for of the 4, you're going to have to wait for 1 to complete before you have a free thread to go and fetch it from the back end. Now, what we can do in GraphQL is, and here's something really cool. We'll just go ahead and say, I'm going to alias several times. I'm going to use control space. Oh, no, I am going to, welcome. There we go. Okay. So we'll leave it at 3, but I think you'll get the general idea. So I'm going to make a single call, a single post call, and I'm going to get that call returned 3 times. So this is a very simple string example, but it doesn't have to stop here. You can imagine if you're fetching a list of patients and then the patient's addresses and then the patient's observations or other things in healthcare that you'd have, you might have to go and make call after call after call after call. And what you would absolutely love is you probably would love reading about things that that Netflix or LinkedIn or Facebook or Microsoft does in terms of fanning requests out and fanning them back in, but you don't have the dev team to go and create all those resources.
Yeah.
What I'm telling you is that GraphQL will do that for you. So I didn't have to code anything to tell GraphQL, go fan out this request, and then consolidate the reply into one backend, and then do all these renames. You don't have to write any of that code. You're freed to just write your business logic, and that's it.
It's fascinating you show me this because this reminds me of some scenarios where we need different permutations of somebody's personally identifiable information. So, for example, their name, based upon the culture and language being used by the browser they're accessing from. Does their family name or given name comes first? So that we create multiple queries to come up with different permutations of the name. We create different queries to come up with different permutations of their contact information, and all of this could be done in the query rather than us having to engage the API team to build brand new endpoints just because we want to change the result of our query.
Exactly, and let's go into that. So these are really simple. These are just returning a string. Let's call a more complex query that I've created that, like your patient example, is a questionnaire. So questionnaire is a standard output in the FHIR, the FHIR standard, which is very important for healthcare. So in GraphQL syntax, what we do with a query, and we haven't talked about this before, is it's the query name, it's the input in parentheses, and when we do control space, you can see that it isn't really, there's no input required there. And I'll do the output, which we haven't seen before. So on all of these welcome queries, we're returning a string. And you can see that as I hover over it, it says string. String is just a scalar, nothing complex there. Questionnaire, we're returning an iQueryable, which is an array of questions, an array of questionnaires. So now, here is something that you've probably experienced as a front-end developer. I'm going to call this thing to get a list of all the questionnaires. A questionnaire has all of these fields associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
But in my front-end application, the only things I really want are the title and this date. And by the way, I didn't have to spell it out. I just hit enter and auto completes. So I only want the title and the date. I don't want that entire full body of all those fields that I'm not even going to use. So with Graph, I'm just listing those 2 things. Gonna hit play. Oh, and I got an error. Yep. I should have noticed my squiggle. And let's actually look at it instead of just trying to solve it. expected name found.
Close parentheses.
Okay. The problem is my here. My
Oh,
hates to
so you use the
shoot.
parentheses when you have a parameter, but you don't have a parameter, you remove them?
Exactly. Yeah. It specifically is telling you, remember, we're trying to optimize for the web, right? So we
Yeah.
don't want to go and send all these unnecessary characters. Um, so anyway, we'll hit play. And now in my same response, right? My front end response, I've got data, I've got my welcome messages, got my questionnaire, and I've got the title and the date right there.
Yeah.
Um, so
This is
one,
amazing.
oh, it'll completely change your life.
Yeah.
Let's say here's just aliasing that one field over to name
Yeah.
something that I've always wanted to do. Boom, I'm done. Nothing. Backend developer didn't have to be contacted at all.
So Matt's probably chuckling because we talk about this in our Cosmos DB webinar content and on Dev Radio,
Mhm.
how using aliases and creating these queries, we can reshape the query results into what you need for your application. So you don't have to redefine your C# Poco classes, plain old CLR object classes
Mhm.
to fit the API. You reshape your query to fit what you have. So whatever makes sense to your front end team, we'll rename, re-alias all we want here so that it flattens out, projects out to only the data you need. And it's funny because we talk about with database to API development, how we only need to pull the query fields we need. Well, here sometimes we pull just the fields we need from database to API, but then from API to front end, we send everything. And we just like, oh, don't worry about it. It's no network traffic involved. Yes, there is. And so this is great that you can do that. I can see scenarios where I'm pulling 4 fields from the database to my API, doing some API level logic, and then the front end only needs 2 of those fields.
Exactly. And I know we've only scratched the surface. There's things like caching that you can do. You can have GraphQL cache intelligently. We have a simple object, but you can imagine um, a questionnaire having multiple inline objects that you can query down again and again and use things like propagation to say, well, give me the items, but give me the fields of these items. You can build a very complex query right here in this IDE, copy and paste it into your code, and be done. So backend dev, so from a front-end perspective, you're just working in the IDE, getting your query developed, and then pasting it right into your code just to run. So Sydney, we've talked through the IDE a little bit. I do want to show you how the code for this works, but I want to find out if there are any burning questions on the IDE that I've failed to answer for you.
Right now, there's really no burning questions. Definitely interested in seeing how we do this in C#. So Samir, let's do this. This series is amazing, and I know everybody's watching, getting a lot of value. Let's keep things going. Let's add. We're going to keep adding content to this series. And Samir, we're going to get you back to show us how to update the API and create new endpoints or query endpoints using C# code. So Samir, as always, thanks for jumping on. We are going to continue this series and hopefully add more and more to it over time. So I will see you all in the next session.
Awesome. See you then.